Thanks so much, Frank. That was incredible critique. The one thing, if for all of you activists out there, you always want a Gerald Kuchar to say what's actually going on, because that's always it's always helpful. But as Frank said, it's not just about Gerald Kuchar. I mean, it's a system-wide problem. And so Frank gave us a great history from 2004 up into the convention. And I want to thank Mickey as well, and I want to thank Mickey for bringing up the, in Chicago we have the historic Birch case. We've got all of these, serious criminal justice problems with psychologists involved in interrogation. And, one of the first things that they brought up to us when we, were against what was going on in Guantanamo and Abu Ghraib is basically that, well, boy, the forensic psychologists here in domestic settings are really going to get upset if you start criticizing what's going on in the domestic scene. So early on, we sort of decided, yeah, let's just focus on the worst part, the worst situations: Guantanamo, Iraq, Afghanistan. And then we'll see what's going on later, and we'll kind of attack the domestic issue. I'm not sure if that was our best choice. I think in a lot of ways, they came back to us with criticism saying, well, this was during some of the council meetings, that it's a slippery slope. Once you start saying psychologists shouldn't be in Guantanamo and Iraq, then they're going to start coming into businesses, and they're going to start, they're going to start criticizing the supermax prisons, and then you're going to have half of psychology against you. But the truth is, when unethical things are going on by psychologists, we have to stand up for them and against them. And as a community psychologist, we all need to, I want to put a word in for community psychology, that we need to think a little bit broader. We need to think about large-scale interventions, and we need to focus on social justice. And so that's why I'm so glad Mickey and others set this up and put this together. Now, I also, despite my activist stance, I want to say that we also need to always focus on ethics. I mean, we cannot be like the other side. I mean, we're also in a city where Saul Alinsky, has promoted techniques of insulting the hierarchy, and sort of trying to get them mad enough to come back and attack you back, and then use that against them. I mean, some of Saul Alinsky's points were great. I mean, having fun, enjoying the process of activism, but some of those things are just unethical for us as professionals. So we always need to be thinking about our own ethics when we're involved in social action. And I'd say for the most part, despite the fact that I agree with everything Frank said, that there has been open dialogue with the APA. We had a nice mini convention in August on this interrogation issue. Steve Banke did tons and tons to try and get that set up, and we had activists, and we had people from the social justice side, and we had many military people all presenting together, and there was some tension and conflict, but I think ultimately it was an incredible event, and some common ground was reached. I mean, I think some of us from the social justice side were surprised that some of the military people were saying, yeah, psychologists do not need to be involved in the interrogations. We just don't want you to take them out of Guantanamo. Well, just to clarify, this amendment that went down during the council meeting in August was not saying that psychologists should not be in Guantanamo. It was saying that if psychologists are in settings where human rights are being violated, psychologists should only be playing a pro-welfare, pro-well-being, or pro-mental health role. I mean, it's not asking a lot. There was a huge, huge compromise on our part. I mean, maybe what would have been better for us to just say, any psychologist present in settings like Guantanamo are supporting the system there, are supporting the lack of habeas corpus, and they should be removed. But we took a very compromised stance, and nevertheless, I mean, that very critical amendment got shot down. So, at the same time, I want to say that there was language in that APA 2007 resolution this August that was impressive. Frank talked about 1.02 in the ethics code that basically says psychologists, if there's conflict between law, a governing authority, or regulations, that the psychologist may, add the ethics code, the psychologist may follow the law, meaning not necessarily follow the ethics code. Well, it's very clear in this new resolution, and I want to thank Steve and everyone who worked on that, to say that is not acceptable. So the fact that this resolution basically says that you do not follow orders. It also, the resolution was nice in that it listed some techniques. It listed no waterboarding. I have the list somewhere. Really excluded many techniques. But just like Frank has shown us sort of this pattern of just suspicious activity. I mean, I think Frank described it as sort of this programmed response and this doing whatever is possible to connect the military with organized psychology. I mean, we saw that during the negotiations, during the convention. One day, the language, I have it here somewhere, but it was basically sensory deprivation was one example. Now, sensory deprivation is kind of a difficult psychological technique for us to attack because it sort of is the absence of something. But the fact that it's the absence of something and the fact that it's intangible, leaving someone isolated, I mean, despite that, it's really one of the most horrific techniques used. Now, our ethics code basically says do no harm. Well, one day, sensory deprivation is one of the excluded techniques. Psychologists should not be using it. Overnight, the language changed to sensory deprivation should not be used to an extent that causes severe mental or physical health. So how did that severe sneak in there? Eventually, we bargained it down to significant. But do no harm is do no harm. Psychologists should not be involved at all in regulating how much harm is done. Psychologists should not be deciding this is significant or we can do it up to a severe extent. So it's these type of, it's this sort of what we perceive on our side as deception that's troublesome. There's a case book that we're waiting. Maybe Steve can give us an update on that today. There's other CIA-like language that we feel loopholes need to be closed. There's a lack of publicity. Frank talked about the APA testimony that came out after this resolution that basically asked for funding but didn't take a stand against torture. There's a lot of troublesome things that are still going on. One other example is the American Psychological Association has said again and again that rapport-building techniques are the only ones that work. The question then is, why didn't we just say, why didn't we come up with a resolution 5 resolutions ago and basically say psychologists may only use rapport-building techniques? And again, there's no other explanation that there's some siding with the Bush administration on this. So, again, I just want to sort of say that there's a lot of work to be done, and we're much more organized than we ever were, and we've made a lot of progress with the APA, but there's still some loopholes that need to be sealed up. So I just want to, again, as many of you are psychologists, future psychologists, I want you to think about community psychology and getting out there and action on this and many other issues, and paying attention to human rights, and using our tools in psychology for well-being, which is what the APA ethics code says we should do.